Hello and welcome to this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show and podcast. I am your host, Christine Innes. I am so delighted because I know we are going to have some great conversation today, but also too this very beautiful soul I get to talk to again, which I am excited about. So Lucy, welcome, beautiful.
Thanks, Christine. It's lovely to be here.
I'm really excited because the topic that we're going to be talking about today, look, is something very, very close to my heart. So we're going to be talking a lot about self-love, self-care with that. But everyone who knows me knows that I get carried away. So I'll just pause for a moment and I will hand over to you, beautiful, for you to introduce yourself. And then we're going to have a great conversation.
Thank you so much. So, hi everyone. My name is Lucy Kobier. I am the founder of the Self Care Academy and bestselling author of the book I Am Worthy. And in that book, I actually share a bit more about my self care journey and how self care actually really saved my life. And off the back of kind of having my whole world collapse around me in the space of about 2 weeks, I realized I needed to get really real about what I was eating, what I was drinking or not drinking, as the case needed to be, how I was moving my body, and kind of what I was doing for my mind and also my kind of like my mental health and sleeping as well. And so from there, being able to get those foundational blocks right, I was able to kind of rebuild my life and then kind of actually get myself into a space where I was able to operate and function again and kind of build things up and rediscover my self-love, my self-confidence. And as a result, I founded the Self-Care Academy, which I'm very excited to be bringing to the world, and really helping other people understand the real power of self-care.
Yeah, I love, like, honestly, I really adore you. I love you being raw and vulnerable and sharing your story, but also to using the power of that to now help show other people what is possible. Because I think when we've gone through something, it really allows us to be really truly authentic, but also really connect on such a really deep and personal level as well, because we've been there, you've done it, and you
Mm.
know what is possible to come out from the other side.
Yeah, and I think there's so many times that a lot of us, right, would have like looked in the mirror and like, who is that person even looking back at me, or just feeling as though total overwhelm, can't get on top of anything in life, and just constantly trying to keep up. And we've been fed this belief that self-care is about having a bubble bath, it's about going and getting a massage, it's going to a day spa. But all that is really doing is pushing the pause button on all the things that are causing stress, worry, and anxiety in our lives. And so I'm really passionate about helping redefine this narrative of self care and how people understand self care and how we can actually start using it as an empowering tool to resolve those things, and actually create lives that we're excited to wake up from instead of ones we're trying to find escapes from.
Mm. One of the things that I learned on my own journey was the fact that in order for me to heal, I had to feel. Because a lot of the times, like you're saying, you go get a massage, have a bubble bath, have a shower. Like sometimes just having a shower for me was self-care because I got out of bed, but I wasn't feeling, like I wasn't allowing all the feelings to come up because I didn't actually know how to process those as well. Is that actually part of self-care journey?
Yeah, so being aware of your emotions and kind of getting in touch with how you're feeling and what's coming up for you, our bodies and our emotions are really good at telling us when we need to pay attention to something. And we get so caught up in the busyness of life and getting through this mental to-do list that we need to do. And especially as women, parents, working, running around, maintaining a house, doing all the things, we neglect what our bodies are trying to tell us. And it's those things that are coming up through emotions and those little niggles and little ailments as well that you're kind of like, oh, I'll just worry about that later. And we kind of push them down and ignore them until they get to a point where it's like, well, you're not ignoring me anymore. So here I am. And it'll show up in a significant illness or get yourself really sick or something like that. But with the emotions, it's very much we're taught to push them down. We want to drink alcohol to numb them. We want to just tune out. We don't want to acknowledge them and feel them, but feeling our emotions and kind of allowing them to be there, but without having to buy into them, I think is the distinction that I like to put into it. It's like, yes, you're allowed to feel sad. Yes, you can feel angry. Yes, you can feel upset. Yes, you can be down about something, but don't let that take control of how then you're moving forward. Like feel it, acknowledge it, be with it, totally okay,
Mm.
accept it, but then
Mm.
move forward into the direction you want to go rather than letting that control your direction forward.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had a pity party for about 5 years, I think it was. And it was the poor me, feel sorry for me, everyone's against me, everything's always happening to me. But
Mm.
that actually didn't allow me to even move forward because it wasn't, you're constantly looking backwards opposed to what is the potential to move forward.
Yeah, and pity parties are fine. I was throwing one for myself last weekend, but it's allowing yourself to feel it and then like, okay, but now I'm moving on from it. I'm not going
Yeah.
to stay in this place because this isn't actually serving me. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
allowed to feel sad. Yes, I was navigating some stuff. And you know what? We're all human. We have emotions. It throws us off course a little bit.
Mm.
But being able to sit with it and go, look, I actually just gave myself space. I'm like, I feel miserable. I feel crap. I cleared my calendar for the night. I sat and I watched a movie, which I don't very often do, and I just sat with it.
Yeah.
But then the next morning, it was like, okay, cool. Acknowledging how we got there and kind of the events and circumstances that were contributing to those emotions and why I was feeling like that, and going, I don't want to keep feeling like this. So shifting my focus to something I was excited about creating, shifting my focus to spending time with people who lit me up and filled me with joy, and then being able to move into that space with a clear a clear, not a clear conscience, but like a clear state of being,
Yeah.
to be able to enjoy it and move forward. And just through the day, as I even found myself like, oh, but I'm a bit sad about these things, it's kind of like, well, that's okay. You can feel sad, but we're choosing to move forward. It's okay to
Yes.
feel sad, but we're choosing to move forward.
Yeah.
And keeping that focus whenever I was finding myself wanting to fall back into my little pity party, it was like, nope, you've given yourself that time. Now we're moving forward.
Mm. I love the word choose because I've been working with a different coach and it's something that they've obviously brought into it. And I think, a lot of it we can choose to be happy or we can choose to be sad, but we can also choose to acknowledge the feelings and then choose to be able to look at things in a different perspective. And it is about knowing and maybe having those tools to be able to help us make those better choices as well.
Yeah, I am a very big fan of choice and choosing as well. And it's a very frequent word used in a lot of the material that I put out and when I'm talking with my clients as well. Because we've got the power of choice. So we can
Mm.
control our thoughts, our feelings, to a degree, our emotions, and we can control the words that come out of our mouth. And we can choose how we're showing up. We can
Mm.
choose what we're saying, and we can choose what we're saying to ourselves by how we're thinking about things. And there's a very common saying, like if you like the definition of crazy is continuing to do the same thing and expect a different result. And it's like, well, start making better choices and you're going to start
Yeah.
getting better outcomes. And I really think that a lot of it comes back to the choice that we're making. And
Mm.
even when you feel like there is no possible choice available to you, like your world is collapsing around you and you feel like you've been pushed into a corner, you can still choose your attitude. You can still choose
Mm.
the way you want to move forward with it. Um, and no one can ever take that away. So even if if you feel like your back is up against a wall, you can still choose how you think about that situation, because
Mm.
no one else has that power over your mind.
Oh, I love that so much because we all have choices in everything, in every aspect of life. However, there's a lot of people who might be listening going, okay, well, that's all really great, but what's the starting point to either, allowing the self-care, that self-love back into your life? Where would people start?
Great question. So people are all obviously at different points in their journey. And so if they're at that point of just like, I don't even recognize that person looking in the mirror and who I'm looking at, I don't even like who I see.
Mm.
Um, and I put a post up on my Facebook page the other day, and it was like, love isn't always at first sight.
Mm.
So, what can you start doing to give that person in the mirror a bit of attention and a little bit of affection and see what grows from there? You don't need to go all in with, like, oh, I love you. You're so amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. And get vibey with yourself. But it's about acknowledging yourself and just like, well, what does that person, what do I need today to feel loved, to feel cared by myself? And
Yeah.
it could be it could be taking a walk, right? It could be taking a shower if that is what you're needing for yourself. But it's about bringing awareness to where you're at on your journey and
Yeah.
what you need individually. And when we start kind of bringing awareness to the situation, that's when we can start getting a bit of perspective and start making different choices.
Yeah, I love that. Do you also find that a lot of us, when we are in these moments, and we're just so overwhelmed with it, obviously there's a little child that sort of, comes up, but we actually have to give ourselves permission to to take some time out for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that we are, particularly as women, are very guilty of not taking the time out, or even when
Mm.
we take time out, we feel guilty for doing it, right?
Yeah,
So it's like we finally carved out this
yeah.
time for ourselves, but then you go, if you've booked into a day spa or you've run a bath, but then you're like, I feel guilty for having this time out.
Mm.
But then you're like, and then you finish it and you're like, oh, well, I haven't even done self-care properly because I'm not even feeling relaxed and rejuvenated from this that I found the time to do. I spent the money on doing it, and I'm still feeling crap at the end of it. Um, and so it's like, well, then I can't even do self-care right. And then we end up in this spiral of self-loathing, really, because it's like, well, I can't do
Mm.
this right, I can't do that, I can't even self-care right. Like, what can I even do right in life? And that's where I feel where we can redefine what self-care is, and it's really becoming coming to the awareness of what you need personally. What space do you need? What is causing you stress, worry, or anxiety? And how can you start taking actions to resolve those things rather than just hitting the pause button, feeling like you need to do this massive Instagram worthy shot of an amazing bubble bath or the day spa you're going into. That's not what it's about.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
what do you need on a personal level? Is it balancing your budget? Is it getting through the laundry before you go to bed? Is it doing your meal plan and making sure you've got your meal prep done for the week? Like, these are the small things, everyday actions that most of us are doing anyway, but switching that awareness and the intention to how we're doing it to kind of like, well, if I get this done before I go to bed, you know what? I'm going to sleep better because I'm not going to be thinking about that load of laundry that's lying there waiting for me to hang out in the
Mm.
morning. Or if I've got my meal planning done, I know I'm going to have a late meeting on Wednesday afternoon. So if I know my meal's prepped and I can just come home and I've just got to heat it up or reheat it, I'm
Mm.
not going to end up getting takeaway on the way home. I'm not stressed about what I'm cooking for dinner and in that time rush because we've been proactive in taking that action. So it's kind of bringing that awareness to what do we need ourselves and putting the intention behind the action rather than taking a pause or an escape from life.
Yeah, like I mean, honestly, like finances is one of those things that obviously causes so much stress in so many people's life. Um, and I think when you can go, okay, well, what's the reason being? It might be, if you're a casual, like you're not earning enough money this week, or those sorts of things. But sometimes we can bury it
Mm.
and not even, like you're saying, acknowledge it. And I really love that point of just saying, hey, this is what's causing me stress. Because when you acknowledge it, you actually then allow your mind to think creative ways to help resolve it as well.
And also, I found realizing that it's actually not as big of an issue as we
Yeah.
think that it is. Because I know for me, so I struggled with my financial situation for a long time, and I could never figure out why, because I actually had a good paying job. I lived within my means, but I always felt stressed financially. And it's because I just never actually paid attention to my money.
Yeah.
But when I started sitting down and doing a budget, and I was like, oh, this is what's coming in, this is what's going out, I'm actually fine. Like, why? I was just carrying this constant state of stress about finances
Mm,
that I didn't even need to be carrying, but I just
yeah.
wasn't aware that my situation was fine because my upbringing and my programming from early in life was always we just never got enough money. So I just always assumed I never had enough money and always was stressed about money, even though I didn't have to be. And then even in times where I have been short of money in my adult life, and things have been a bit tighter than I would have been comfortable with, I still managed to like look at it from the perspective of like, well, can I get through the next 3 days? Because I always was like, if I've got enough
Mm,
means to get through the next 3 days, like that's enough time to solve a problem, right? So if I've got
yeah.
enough, if my rent's paid and my bills are covered and I've got enough food in my pantry for the next 3 days, then we're fine. And that would free up the mental space to be doing whatever I needed to do. But if I got to the point of like, well, I don't have enough to cover these things in the next 3 days, I've got to
Mm,
get to figuring out how I can make that money or what I need
yeah.
to do to make ends meet. But it was just then taking the pressure off rather than just feeling this overwhelming weight of, oh, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, I don't have enough. It was like, okay, well, this is what we do have. This is where
Yeah.
the gap is. What do I need to do to fix the gap? And then it was coming to it from an empowered and intentional action rather than this
Mm,
overwhelm and stress and that feeling of life is happening to me. Like because I knew what was happening, had that awareness, able to take intentional action, just
yeah.
felt so much more empowered in the situation, even though the situation was exactly the same.
Yes.
But I
Yeah, but
chose,
you're more in control.
yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of it is also stories that, like you were saying, like you've been brought up, like, oh, we don't have enough money, or, oh, only the rich, have a good life, like all these different things that we hear growing up as kids. How much does that actually play at such an important part when we're looking at the stress factors, but also adding in that self-love, self-care into ourselves?
yeah, so massively. So our programming and what we've been taught as children, and I think there's a lot more awareness around this now, is like that kind of sets you up for your beliefs and your patterns for
Mm,
later in life. And we just kind of run on autopilot. And it's just this, well, this is how it's always been. So this is how it's always going to be. And then it kind of becomes a self-perpetuating and self-fulfilling prophecy in our lives because that's what we're expecting. And so that's what we're getting. And when we're starting to slow down and actually bring awareness to it. So it's kind of like, well, hang on, is this belief actually still serving me?
mm,
And being able to go, well, this is how I've been approaching money, or this is how I've approached even what I eat, or how I exercise, or how I move, like, or this is how I deal with relationships.
yeah.
Like in every area, right? We've got our autopilot pre-default systems that we run on. But when we can actually think, well, and I'll just switch to the context of a relationship because I think we've um, covered quite a bit on the finance side. But if you're in a relationship and you've got your way of showing up in that, and that's how you've just always done relationships, but it's not until you're like, well, hang on, this relationship isn't actually at the level that I would like it to be.
Mm,
Why is that? But
yeah.
and instead of looking at the other person, it's like, how am I showing up in this relationship? What can I change? Or what beliefs have I brought into it? What are my expectations that I've brought into this that
Yeah.
aren't actually serving me anymore? Because we've just lived on that autopilot. So taking that space to bring that awareness to the beliefs that we're bringing in, the way
Mm,
that that's showing up in the actions that we're taking, our thoughts, our expectations. And it's kind of like, well, is this actually serving me?
yeah.
Doesn't serve me to think that I need to be a 1950s housewife in this relationship. Maybe it does, and that's fine, right? Then keep that. But maybe it also doesn't. And if it doesn't serve you anymore, that's when you get to have that choice about, well, I don't want to have this belief anymore. I don't want to keep taking these actions anymore. I want to change that. And then you can kind of come into it with that empowered and that intentional action.
I love all that. If somebody's obviously watching today and they're sitting there and they're feeling that overwhelm and all of that, what would be, something that you would say to them to, I guess, maybe start that conversation within themselves to, add in that self-love, self-care?
Yep. So the first thing I would be doing is sitting down and drawing a circle, dividing it into eight, and then listing out the eight key areas that are in our lives. So we've got finances, we've got career, you've got health and fitness, you've got relationships with your significant other, relationships with family, hobbies, and one more. So your spiritual
Yeah.
state and rating out of 10 where they are on those things. So from a scale of 1 to 10 in my career, 10 being I am absolutely where I want to be, and 0 being nowhere near where I want to be, where am I? In my
Mm,
relationship with my partner, again, 0 to 10. 10 is we've got the best relationship, it's on fire, can't get any better.
mm,
0, lots of room for improvement. And go around the circle and rate yourself and then kind of color it in. And what will end up showing is often a very unbalanced wheel where some areas we're going to be more happy with and other areas are going to be shorter. But the other thing that is amazing about the human mind is it likes to mush everything together. And by doing this and kind of stepping it out into those 8 areas and like breaking your focus out kind of helps deal with that overwhelm, because it's like you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and have all of this heaviness hanging on you. But after breaking it down into those 8 areas, it might just be finances that are stressing you out. You actually love your job. Your
Yeah.
financial situation is fine. Sorry, love your job. Your relationship is fine, but your finances are crap
Yeah.
because your job doesn't pay you enough money to finance your lifestyle or whatever it is. Or your job's great, your finances are great, but you're actually just in a bad place in your relationship. And so it's actually just taking that perspective, like taking a step back and giving you some
Mhm.
perspective on life to be able to unpick where that overwhelm is actually coming from. We are very good at catastrophizing. We can have a horrendous day at work, come home and let rip on the rest of the family. Nothing is good enough. The dinner is terrible. And it all spirals just because we've had a bad day at work.
Yeah.
And we're like, but life is terrible. And it's like, well, life is not terrible.
Yeah.
It's just that one aspect is so being able to get that perspective and just be able to see what's working, what's not working, and then you can choose where you're going to put your focus. And it's kind of like, well, this area in my career, I'm only a 2. So maybe it's time to look for another job instead of
Yeah.
just assuming that you need to stay in that job. Or my relationships going really well, but financially we're struggling. So how can you start working with your partner to have that
Mm.
conversation about managing finances? And all of this is self-care. Like this is not, these are all things we're doing. It is all life that we are living. Um, but sorting this out and finding out where you're not living optimally or living at a level that you want to be living at. And we don't need to be 10 out of 10 for everything. Like there is no, that is not not at all. Um, some people, overachievers, high performers, want to be a 10 out of 10. That is fine. Um, but if you want to be a 6 out of 10 and 6 out of 10 is comfortable and happy and you are thriving in that space,
Yeah.
that is right for you. So it's kind of just giving you that opportunity to pause, get the perspective, and then go, okay, well, where are my stress points and what action can I start taking to resolve that? And that kind of helps diffuse the overwhelm, realize that actually all of our life is not a catastrophe. It might just be 1 or 2
Mm.
areas, and we're letting that leak into other areas. So just kind of like bringing the boundaries back in and focusing our attention where it needs to be.
I love that so much because as a visual person too, like for me, like being able to see it, it
Mm.
just allows me to, I guess, interpret a little bit differently because I can sit down, I can write things, but if it's nicely colored and, all of that, it just sort of pops out just that little bit more. And I think that's also something people could do multiple times a year as a check-in as well.
Yeah, so it's I do it at least twice a year with my forward planning and goal setting, kind of like, well, how am I going? And it also gives you a reflection point as well, because if you
Yeah.
keep them together, you can go, well, at the beginning of the year, I was a 3 for finances and now I'm a 5. And so you can look at the change that you've made, what's
Mm.
worked, what do you want to keep doing, or vice versa. If you've dropped down,
Yeah.
what happened there and how can I actually mitigate that to get it back up again? So what was working before that I'm not doing now? So maybe you might have been on a health kick in January and you were feeling really good and optimistic about your well-being and your physical health. And then come July, you're like, oh, I'm feeling really run down and kind of a bit slow. For us here in Australia, that's winter. So it's kind of to be expected a little bit, but then it's kind of like, but how could I get back to that 8
Yeah.
feeling instead of this
Yeah.
5 feeling that I have now? What was I doing then that I'm not doing now? So you can use it as a really good reflection tool as well.
I love all of that. And I think it's just like also just practical. And I think so many times, like, because when people think of self-care too, they think they have to go and spend money, like, as, go to the, get your hair done or, have a massage facial and all that sort of stuff. But it's the practical things that actually allows us to give the freedom, I guess, for ourselves, but also, if it's financial, it's time to see the areas where we can make those adjustments.
Yeah, real self-care is free.
Yeah.
Because it's things that we've got to do anyway. Like we're living life. We're
Yeah.
navigating our way through life. And we get so focused on caring for other people and making sure other people's needs are met. And
Mm.
for me, redefining self-care is about slowing down and looking at what needs do I have that need to be met. And I love baths. I love massages. I love going and getting a facial. But I have those as a part of living an amazing life,
Yeah.
not as something that I need to take a break from the life that I'm living.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much, so much. Like as I said, like I absolutely adore you. I think what you're showing people is the practical side of it, opposed to, I guess, the filtered side of the self-love, self-care. How can people work with you?
Yes, so I have the Self Care Academy, so selfcareacademy.com.au. We have a summit coming up in a couple of weeks, so I'm not quite sure when this is going to go to air, whether that
Yeah.
is relevant. But if people head over to the Self Care Academy, we've got new courses coming online in the next couple of weeks. So we've got Self Care 101, we've got an amazing course called Empower Her, which kind of just breaks down over the course of 5 or 6 weeks, looking at people's values, looking at boundary setting, looking at what does a self-care plan look like for you, and how can we bring that all together to set aligned goals and live in alignment with our values and who we are as people. So the best way to get in touch and connect is through the website or through my socials.
And we're going to pop all of those details below so how people can reach out to you, Lucy. So, um, before we go, like honestly, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I think this is, for me, the most practical way for people to really understand, the self-care, and that it's achievable for everybody, as well, which I absolutely love. But I've got 5 questions that I would love to ask you, which is what we've been asking all of our guests, just so we can get to know you on a personal level.
Sure.
So in the morning, are you a tea or coffee person?
Coffee.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. If you were to go on a holiday and you like a holiday destination, would you prefer to travel by boat or by plane?
Plain.
Yeah, get there sooner for me.
Fast.
Yeah. And honestly, if you were had the time to be able to curl up in bed, take some time out, would you prefer to read a book or to watch a movie?
Read a book.
I love it. If you were having a dinner party and you could invite one guest from either the past or the present, who would that be?
Oh, a little bit sentimental. My dad, he passed away a few years ago. So if I could have another dinner with him, I would give almost anything in the world for it.
Oh, I hear you on that. Absolutely, absolutely. And the last question is that if you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Ooh, I'm going to go with optimistic.
I love that. I love that so much. You certainly are. You're a ray of sunshine. And honestly, I really appreciate you being so raw and vulnerable and just the work that you're doing helping people. So thank you so much. We're going to pop all the details and we're also going to pop the link because Lucy did an amazing masterclass for us in the Escapee Club Facebook group. So if you want to even dive in deeper, go and watch that. But thank you for being here today, beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, my pleasure. For those who are watching at home, I hope you have loved this episode. If you've liked it, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Leave us a comment below. And remember to live life to the fullest every single day. Love and light to you all.